Now we will be talking about the most important digital library software, which is called DSpace. Probably it stands for digital space, though nowhere it was pronounced the expansion of DSpace is digital space. Now what is DSpace? It is a digital object management system, and you can create, search, retrieve digital objects, facilitates preservation of digital objects, and open source software allows open access and self archiving, allows building institutional repositories and subject repositories. As I have told in some other presentation, the only difference between institutional and subject repositories is the scope of the content. If the publications are confined to a particular institute, we call it institutional repositories, but if it does not confine to one particular repository, but one particular institution, but it is the subject scope is limited to a particular subject, but beyond any boundaries of the institution, then we call it a subject repository. Some people may prefer to call it thematic repository or domain specific repository. Okay. Again, I would like to give one more clarification that with regard to the word digital object, some people call it digital document or digital object or even digital resource. But whatever it is, basically it is a digital document either in the form of PDF or image or a text, video or audio. It is called digital object or resource or a document. Okay. So, a digital repository or institutional subject repositories accept the content, but basically they use the same software. So, DSpace can be used or along with it even ePrints and others also can be used for any of this kind of repository. Okay, what are the software requirements to run DSpace? Basically, originally it was developed on Unix systems, and but there is no limitation that it runs only on Unix systems. In fact, I tried on Mac and even Sun Solaris also. Okay. Of course, now Sun is no more around, replaced by Oracle. So, but again you can run it on MS Microsoft Windows operating system also, though my experience is it is a bit more difficult to install DSpace on MS Windows, whereas it is much easier to run on Linux or any Unix based systems, for the simple reason much of the software required for running DSpace is readily available on Unix systems. Something like PostgreSQL, you do not have to download, actually you can just use it as it is, or Apache server is there readily. Like that, many of the software are readily Tomcat or any other software, or even mail servers, mail clients, everything is available readily with Unix or Linux operating systems. So, you require in addition Java servlet engine. Okay. One can use either Apache Tomcat, which is the most popular one, but there are other JSP based servlet engine like Racine or Jetty or JBoss. Okay. So, you can use either of them. People believe that JBoss is much more professional, but it is built on Apache Tomcat. Then uses open source PostgreSQL relational database system or even commercial Oracle also. So, much of the data, especially the data about the communities, collections, about users, their passwords, everything is stored in a relational database system. So, Postgres is of course is readily available in Linux. Now, what DSpace can do? It can capture digital content in any format directly from the creators, that is researchers or authors. As we have already discussed, this is called self-archiving. In fact, any author can archive his publication or photograph or anything using DSpace. And it allows the authors to describe the digital document using Dublin Core metadata schema, like descriptive or technical rights metadata, all this can be entered along with it. Once the user or the author submits his publication, DSpace allots a kind of a persistent identifier. It could be a CNRI handle or a local handle. Then again it is OAI PMH version 2 compliant. So that means it allows metadata to be imported and exported. Not only that, the system has capability to crosswalk to other metadata schema. For example, even though the author puts the metadata in qualified Dublin Core, but if he wants to export the data through OAI PMH in RDF or any other DIDL or MODS or any other metadata schema, DSpace facilitates such an attempt. Okay, what are the possible content that can go with DSpace? You can upload preprints or publications like articles, postprints, technical reports, conference papers, thesis and dissertations, and even data sets like statistical data sets or geospatial or scientific data sets. Virtually, actually, there is no limitation on what kind of content you can upload to DSpace, because blissfully DSpace is unaware of, like any computer, what exactly being uploaded. There is an old saying, okay, like GIGO, garbage in and garbage out. That means if somebody uploads a garbage, of course, DSpace stores it and retrieves it. So it doesn't, but mostly it is being used for publications and thesis and dissertations. That is also very popular. I think in India the most popular ETD repository is the Shodh Ganga, where it hosts thousands of theses collected from various universities and others. So you can have the various kinds of data like images, both visual and scientific images, then audio files and video files, text files. In text files you can have spreadsheets, presentations, PDF files, or even word processor files like LibreOffice Writer or MS Word. But perhaps the most popular one is the PDFs. Okay, probably if you go to OpenDoor, you can look at the statistics, what kind of data that is available with open source, open access digital repositories. So it has two interfaces actually, basically. In the beginning, much of the earlier versions of DSpace were offered with the JSP-UI interface. Later versions started introducing XML UI in addition to the JSP-UI. Presently, both interfaces can be chosen by any user. And the main advantage of using XML UI interface is anybody can, third party people can develop the themes. Probably you might have been familiar in Drupal, WordPress and all these software. There will be lots of third party themes. One can adopt that, even for example Gmail. Okay. So though right now there are not many third party interfaces, but the official version itself has Mannequin, which is the oldest, then Rubrik and Classic. Classic one looks like JSP-UI interface, the exception being that it is done in XML UI. So XML UI gives lot of freedom for the end user to modify the interface. Probably you might have seen some of the DSpace repositories pay a lot of attention to the interface for the simple reason, after all, the first page should be much more attractive, okay, so that the user gets enticed to look into the digital repository. That is why many people try to make it look beautiful and more informative. So, now both are offered, both XML UI and JSP UI. Then what kind of file formats it supports? See, when it comes to digital preservation, one of the most important things is using open standards. So, the formats should be open standards. Say in case of images, JPEG is an open standard, or in case of movies, probably the MPEG is an open standard. In case of text files, either plain text or PDF-A, not the general PDF, PDF-A is an open standard. So, if one uses or any of the LibreOffice suite software like presentations or spreadsheets or LibreOffice Writer, all these generate open formats. The reason for this is the administrator of DSpace can identify what is known to him and what he is going to support in the future. For example, if LibreOffice format becomes outdated down 5 or 10 years, probably he has to migrate the content to more popular open standard that would be in vogue after 5-10 years. That means, so when he says that known and supported format, for example, he is consistently upgrading Microsoft Office suite, then in that case he says, okay, Microsoft Office products like DocX or anything will be supported. When he configures the system saying that Microsoft Office products are known and supported, what he means to convey to the submitter who is trying to self-archive his publication, yes, your article, even the present format, if it is outdated, I take the responsibility of migrating to future formats. So, if he puts a particular one under known and unsupported, means I know this format, but I am not going to support in the future versions of it. That means I may not migrate to future versions of the software. So, unknown means something, of course, many things formats keep coming up, probably the known ones he can list out, unknown ones if he excludes. So, this is what the administrator decides, what is known and supported, so that it gets conveyed to the submitter, okay, this is a supported format. That means for long term my article's content would be visible to the end users. So, it is the administrator who decides what is known and what is supported, and at the end point the author decides whether he wants to submit in that format or some supported format rather than an unsupported format. So, the information model, okay, is the entire digital library is organized into various communities. Normally these communities depends on the, probably in case of academic repositories, it could be a department as a community, like Department of Physics or Department of Economics, or it could be a lab in case of a scientific lab or a research center, or schools based in various disciplines. But again, there is no strict rule. For example, in case of an industry or software industry, for example, they can create communities, community of developers, community of people who test, community of marketing people or administrators. Under each community they create collections. These collections would be that is under, say for example, there is a community called the Department of Physics. Under that probably they can have preprints or thesis and dissertations as collections. Then they can have items, that means each collection will have a number of items which include a digital object, that is the bitstream, or the metadata about the digital object, that includes the that is a part of the item. So, the digital objects are the ones which contain some content in some format, whether audio, video or text. So, intellectual property. So, this is one of the important things, though this is in contrast with the open access philosophy, but DSpace at the end of uploading the metadata and actual digital object, at the end it displays a screen with kind of a license. Of course, by default DSpace has a non-exclusive license, but again it has to be changed, it should be changed to something more suitable to that organization, because it mentions this content is from a DSpace university, which is not there. Okay, I mean it is all fictitious, a kind of a fictitious license, but it can be. But again the recent versions of DSpace give a choice to choose for Creative Commons license. But in any case, usually jocularly I say, if you want the best license, go to a lawyer, then he writes, he prepares a copyright license so that no human being can understand what exactly he meant by it. So, anyhow, along with the digital object, always the license gets stored. That means each digital object is associated with the actual object, that is a audio file or a video file or a text file, or and the metadata about the object and the license agreements that are related to the object gets stored. Now, so some of the good things about the DSpace is it has a modular architecture, so that anybody can modify, customize without affecting the other modules, and recent versions again has a REST protocol implemented. So, any programmer having knowledge of how to interact with the digital repository using REST protocol can develop application program interfaces. Then 100% open source, that means not only the DSpace itself is open source software, the components used in it like the Postgres SQL and other things are also in open source. Then you have CNRI handle systems, which is a persistent handle, this one. Usually commercial people use DOI, digital object identifiers, that I think many of you are familiar with. Every journal article you find a digital object identifier. But in case of digital repositories, normally many people get registered with the CNRI and get a unique identifier from them. In the beginning, CNRI was these handles were offered free of cost, but off late for a paltry amount anybody can get a CNRI handle ID. So that every object that is stored in DSpace will have a persistent identification. Then open URL linking. Technically, if somebody has open URL software like Exlibris and other things, you can integrate that with DSpace, and OAI-PMH for metadata exposing. Then the backend technology to support all these features, you can use Apache web server software with OpenSSL or ModSSL, so that if you want to run on HTTPS instead of HTTP, one can integrate ModSSL with Apache server. Then you can use as the software was developed in Java and JSP, you can use again open source Tomcat servlet engine or any other like Jetty or Racine or even JBoss. Then you can use Postgres SQL database management system. Then you have CNRI handles. Then it uses Lucene search engine also, which is a fairly powerful search engine and is from Apache Foundation and is being used in many software products. And Solar, which is based on Lucene, DSpace uses it for statistics purposes. Then it uses OAI PMH protocol interface from, sorry, it was not CNR, it is from OCLC, OAI CAT. Okay. So, naturally any good software should be compliant to the standards. So, if you look into the standards compliance, as we have the Open Archives initiative, protocol for metadata harvesting, that is the most important protocol. Again, recent versions of OAI, I mean DSpace supports OAI ORE, which is Open Archives initiative, object reuse and exchange. That means, if a DSpace repository allows others to harvest not only metadata, but also its objects, you can simply harvest the actual digital content to a local repository. For example, tomorrow if Shodhganga decides instead of collecting the data from each university, if they ask the universities to implement ORE, okay, rather reconfigure their DSpace to make ORE compliant, then they can collect every day whenever any new thesis is added to their any university repository. Then of course, it supports a qualified Dublin core, which is a little modified version of it. Then Unicode, so that you can develop digital repositories, its metadata and content in any of the Unicode languages of the world. That means it is not confined to just English. Many of the Asian scripts or African scripts and other things also can be included. And it also supports both for feeds, both RSS and Atom feeds. Okay? So that if anybody wants to build an aggregator service over RSS feeds or Atom feeds, they can get the information about the recently added items to your DSpace repository. They can get aggregated to their particular service. So, it supports a lot of metadata standards. Okay. Actually, in the beginning only Dublin core was supported. Later, many other metadata standards like UKETD, ETDMS, MarkXML, MARTS, METS, RDF, DIDL, DIM, ORE, all these are supported by metadata, OAI PMH metadata schema of DSpace. So, looking into the popularity of DSpace, I collected from the registry of DuraSpace how many. In fact, we should feel a little happy. Next to United States, maximum DSpace production systems are from India. Long back when I was on the DSpace governance board, advisory board, we were in third place. Now, I am happy to see that India is in the second place. Spain is 103, Japan about 100, Brazil is about 89. So, some of the important sites with regard to DSpace which are helpful if you are keen to initiate a repository service using DSpace. Of course, DSpace homepage is dspace.org, which contains a link to the downloadable pages on GitHub and SourceForge, and also lots of tutorials, lot of major projects around DSpace, a plethora of information you can come across on DSpace under dspace.org. And earlier DSpace was offered only from SourceForge, but of late they moved to GitHub. In fact, if you want the latest versions, perhaps GitHub is a better choice than SourceForge, but you can go to SourceForge and or otherwise you can find this link on dspace.org. But even more importantly, I am sure that once you initiate a repository using DSpace, you will have lot of doubts, lot of problems, system breakdowns, many problems would be there, but there will be a list of mailing lists in dspace.org that is basically run under DuraSpace. So, you can find at least a few user lists including developers and all these mailing lists on dspace.org site.